Hey everyone, how are you today? Welcome to Get Ready With Me and Talk About Stuff. And as usual, I forgot to turn on one of my lights. It's always that one too. So this is the show where I put on my makeup and I talk to you about whatever is on my mind. My name is Stephanie, by the way. Welcome. If you're new here, thank you for stopping by. This is not a tutorial. I am going to be putting on makeup as I talk to you, but this is not a tutorial. So if that's what you're looking for, I invite you to check out other channels. I will not be, talking about what I'm doing. I'm just gonna do it, because that's how I roll. So what is on my mind today? Well, I think what is on my mind today is probably something that's on a lot of people's minds today, and that is we only have 2 more sleeps until we get President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, and I am ridiculously happy about that. But I'm also, as many people are, wondering how we move forward after the last 4 years. And it's not easy. I think it's going to be a major challenge for a lot of people, not just politically. Like, that in itself is a mess, and there's a lot of work to be done there. But also in our relationships with people. How do we move forward? How do we, knowing what we know about the people we love now, what do we do with that information? And my hands are very dry, so I'm putting some, okay, so my 7-year-old nephew was over a couple days ago, and we were, everybody was playing, all the kids were playing, and they got into like this roast battle, talking about, well, you smell like dirty socks and stuff like that. And my 7-year-old nephew says, you smell like week old rotten hand sauce. And we're like, okay, what's hand sauce? And as it turns out, hand sauce is hand lotion. He says, I said, what's hand sauce? And he said, the stuff you put on your hands to heal your skin. And I said, you mean lotion? Oh yeah, lotion. So, but anyway, now it will forever and always be known as hand sauce. And I was just putting hand sauce on my very dry skin. I do not like winter skin. Anyway, as I was saying, I'm telling you what, my mind goes like in a million different directions all the time, and I apologize. I will do my best not to get off track again. But as I was saying, a lot of us learned things about people that we love that leaves us in a position of having to decide what we're going to do in those relationships going forward. Because I don't know of a way to unsee what we've learned. The white evangelical church culture that I grew up in, I've known for some time that they were not the best people. But the last 4 years have really demonstrated for me the cruelty of the church, of the culture that I grew up in. Not just my specific church, but just the culture as a whole. It's incredibly cruel. And it's unbelievably dismissive of people's suffering. Which that in itself is not entirely surprising, because I, having grown up in that culture and having suffered through several mental health crises while I was growing up, I am very well aware of how dismissive the culture can be to the suffering of other people. What I did not expect was how dismissive they became of such blatant suffering, such profound suffering. I will never forget, after I went to the March for Families a couple years back, 3 years back, I guess, and I came home and engaged in a conversation with a family member. And that family member, I said, these families aren't doing anything illegal. They're coming here looking for asylum because, their home countries are not safe. And by the way, a lot of what the United States did to those countries is what destabilized them in the first place. So they are just trying to get away from the mess that we helped make. And I said, asylum is legal. And this person said, well, it is for now. And I thought, wow, that's quite a statement coming from someone who claims to be a follower of Christ. You know, Jesus said to welcome the stranger and to, you know, take care of the poor and the hungry. And, you know, Jesus was pretty clear about that. He wasn't ambiguous about that whatsoever. He is pretty clear with his followers that there are things that they should be doing when met with a situation like that, none of which includes don't welcome them. So that was quite a jarring realization to have about, you know, people that I admired or at least had a good relationship with, that they held these beliefs. And it didn't stop there. I mean, you know, in the last 4 years, I have learned so much about people, especially people who, you know, claim to be followers of Christ. And I have learned that for many of them, morality is relative. And if it's more convenient to ignore what is right, then they will do that. You know, I've learned that a lot of people are pro-life unless it causes them an inconvenience, like having to wear a mask or having to skip out on parties. And at that point, they become pro some lives, particularly fetuses. And, you know, it's just been a very jarring thing to realize that people in my life, there are some people in my life who hold not just toxic beliefs, but outright harmful beliefs, even violent beliefs. And either they can't see the harm they're causing, or they simply don't care, because in their minds, the people they're harming are fair game, because, you know, either they don't approve of their life choices, they think that their sexuality is evil, whatever the case may be. You know, in their minds, that makes the people that their beliefs are hurting and their, you know, elected officials are harming, that makes them, it's like open season on them. They don't care. And that has been really shocking, really honestly quite heartbreaking to realize that there are people in my life who see the world that way. And as we prepare to say, you know, welcome finally the end of the Trump administration and the beginning of the Biden-Harris administration, you know, I'm left with, what do I do with those relationships? And I really don't know. I am not in a position in my life where I can just cut people off. And I don't know that I want to cut off my family. I mean, and maybe that's wrong. Maybe I should want to do that. But, you know, even if I did want to, which I currently don't, I am not in a position where that's possible. I am still in a position of needing, you know, by necessity, needing to be close to them. So I'm in this place where I don't have a lot of choices as far as, you know, just saying goodbye to them, saying that, you know, well, I don't like your philosophies, they're hateful, so on and so forth, so I gotta kick you out of my life. I mean, I'm not able to do that. And I would, you know, imagine there are a lot of people facing that same thing, that they don't like the things they've seen in people that they love, but they're also not in a position to boot those people out of their lives for one reason or another. You know, and that's just how it is. It's not a reflection of, it's not to be taken as approval of those ideas or that they don't care. It's just, by necessity, they can't end those relationships. So then again, we're left with, well, what do we do? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. I do think, you know, I had a conversation with someone a few days ago on Twitter, and they had recommended, you know, these white evangelicals need to go into a black church and essentially, you know, experience some reformation. And I said, no, that's not really the right answer, because black churches historically are like safe havens for the black community, and sending a bunch of bigoted, cruel white evangelicals in there for the purpose of fixing them, you know, it's for so many reasons. No, it's asking the the oppressed to fix the oppressor. It's, you know, it's asking the black community to do a lot of heavy lifting. And so, but as I was having this conversation, I thought, well, what is the answer? And I don't know. I don't have one thing to point to say that this will make things easier going forward. But in that conversation, one thing I concluded is white people need to start holding each other to a higher standard. And I'm not talking about engaging in cancel culture, because I think that there are pros and cons to cancel culture. There's a difference between holding someone accountable for their words and actions and just deciding to be real douchebags about somebody who made a mistake and has owned their mistake and has tried to make amends for their mistake, and you're saying, nope, sorry, that's not good enough. There's a big difference there. But I do think that white people need to be willing to be uncomfortable, and we need to be willing to hold the people in our lives who perpetuated this 4-year-long nightmare accountable for the choices that they made. You know, having a new president in office is not going to do anything about the people who put President Trump in office in the first place. I think that's one of the first and only times in the last 4 years I've actually referred to him as President Trump, and I feel like I need to use mouthwash or something now. That's just, ugh. But anyway, these people made a conscious choice, and a lot of them are still supporting him and will to the very end, and a lot of them still believe that he's going to somehow miraculously manage to hold on to his office even after the 20th. That, you know, Joe Biden will not be sworn in, and Donald Trump will remain president, and he will have a second term, and he will continue making America great again. I mean, they are so deep in the weeds with this delusion that he is somehow above the law, above the requirements of the U.S. Constitution, above everything. And somehow or other, he's going to pull it off so that he does not have to leave office on Wednesday. And they're very, you know, a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them are very committed to this idea, to the degree that, you know, Washington, D.C. and other places around the country are bracing for the potential for a lot of violence on Wednesday. And if you have a following of people who thinks the answer to not getting what they want is to get violent, and don't even start comparing it to the Black Lives Matter protests of last year, which became violent primarily because white supremacists and people who think white supremacists are cool decided to go in and start riots and so forth, knowing the black community would be blamed. And if that is what you're comparing it to, because I've seen this a lot, you are comparing people saying, please stop killing us, to people saying, we don't like the results of this election, so we're going to go threaten to kill people and so forth because we didn't get what we wanted. One was pleading for their very lives. The other was essentially having a temper tantrum. There is no comparison. But I digress. If those are the people that are following you and supporting you, that's not a good sign. And if you are in that Trump cult and you're feeling uneasy about what's happening, you know, and I do believe there are people who are feeling that way. And the reason I say that is because when I was deeply involved in the white evangelical culture, I knew something wasn't right. I knew that I was being steered in the wrong direction. And I knew that before I really began my deconstruction in earnest. So I never want to dismiss the possibility that there are people out there who are, you know, following along, going along for the ride, but they know something's not right. And to those people, I would say, trust your instincts, because if you are surrounded by people who are calling for the violent overthrow of a democratic government and to disallow the swearing in of a democratically elected leader, I'd say your instincts are right on if they're telling you to get the heck out of there, and not only to get out, but to speak up. And I am grateful for the people who are speaking up, although, my God, why did it take an insurrection for you to see that you were following the wrong guy? That, you know, even if you don't like the guy who's coming in, the guy you were following was bad news. You know, it's kind of sad in a way that it came to that, but I'm glad it did. I'm not glad it did. I'm glad it woke people up, is what I'm saying. You know, all they had to do was threaten to kill Mike Pence and bust into the Capitol and steal things and whatnot and so forth, and a woman got shot and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. That's all it took to wake some people up, so I guess that's not so bad. Anyway, so as I think about what comes next, the thing that I keep coming back to is white people need to hold each other accountable without dismissing the possibility that people can learn and grow and change. Because if I didn't believe anybody was capable of learning and growing and changing, that would be rather hypocritical on my part. I used to be just as deeply evangelical as so many people that I'm seeing today who are making the, you know, just an absolute mockery of everything Jesus stood for. Years ago, I would have been right in there with them. I remember before George W. Bush's second term, I went to a rally of his, and there is photographic evidence of this. And I remember coming out of the rally, and there were protesters there, and I didn't understand why at the time. I thought, but we're the good guys. Why are you here? And I didn't get it. And I saw signs, you know, calling us fascists and so forth, and I didn't get it. I didn't get it, but they got me thinking. You know, seeing those signs and growing in my understanding of what fascism is and so forth, it made me stop. It made me pause and think, maybe we're not on the right side of history on some things. And had it not been for people who were willing to stand out there and get loud and be heard and carry their signs and so forth, had it not been for that, it would have taken, I think I still would have eventually deconstructed, but it would have taken me a lot longer. So I never want to dismiss the possibility that there are people out there who are listening to what people are saying, you know, to what Trump's critics and more than that, you know, people who have a greater social consciousness, what they are saying about this administration and what it has done to people. And not only that, but how things will continue to be a problem even after this administration is, you know, a thing of the past, because we still have to deal with the mentality that brought this administration to life in the first place. I have to believe, because of my own history, there are people who are hearing this and observing what's happening, and even if they're not feeling strong enough to walk away just yet, it is getting them thinking. And that is why, you know, we talk about cancel culture a lot on social media and stuff. And, you know, there are certainly people who deserve to be canceled. But there are also people who make big mistakes and do harm people, for sure. But they're also willing to own that they made a mistake, and they're willing to learn from it. And when we cancel people because of a mistake they made, because of something they did without, you know, before they knew better, you know, we remove any possibility that they can grow and change and that they can do better, because what that does is it puts people on the defensive. And it would be nice to say, you know, people should be willing to do the work regardless of how people are responding to them. And that is, you know, that's a nice idea. But, you know, people are human beings. People have feelings. People want to, you know, if they're trying their best, and all that they're getting from, you know, the people telling them that growth and change is necessary, if all they're getting from that crowd is nothing but grief and cancellation, it really kind of for better, you know, whether it's right or wrong, it does cause people to say, you know what, forget it. I tried. That's not necessarily the right response, but I think there is a way to hold people accountable for mistakes that they've made, even big mistakes, even horrific mistakes, without dismissing them entirely as a human being and putting them in a category of people who we believe are beyond help. And it's unfortunate in the way the internet functions or the way social media rather functions, that so many people don't do that there's just not a lot of grace given. And I have a lot to say about that, and I will in my podcast soon. But I think one thing that needs to happen going forward is, yes, hold people accountable, but also recognize that not everyone who made the mistake of voting as they did in 2016, and maybe even as they did last year, they're not beyond help. Not all of them. You know, some people just, you do what you do until you know better, and then you do better. And I have to believe there are people who are ready to do better. And it is for those people that I am saying, let's not just cancel everybody who voted that way. Let's understand that there are some people who did what they did simply because they didn't know better. And as they get to know better, they're going to do better. So that's the first thing. Secondly, as we move forward, I think it's going to become very important for us individually and collectively to focus more on what we are for and less on what we are against. The last 4 years have been years of a lot of anger, a lot of pain, a lot of justified rage at an administration that clearly was not for all people and made no apologies whatsoever for that. They made it very clear that they were there for people who supported Donald Trump and to harm, not just to dismiss, but to actively harm people who did not. There is a lot of justifiable rage, and there has been a lot of justifiable dialogue surrounding why people don't support that administration. And that's understandable. It's right. It's good. But as we move forward into whatever's next, I do think it's going to become very important that we're clear on what we are for. Because I think the whole world knows what a lot of us are against. But what are you for? You know? And that might seem like just a semantics thing, you know? Well, obviously I'm for this and that because I came out against this and that. Well, it's not always obvious. And I think that when we focus so heavily simply on what we're against, it kind of convolutes the message of wanting to move forward to better things. And we've all been, if you're an American, well, not just in America, I think all over the world, the last 4 years has felt like a horrifically abusive relationship to a lot of people. And as we get out of that relationship, there is still going to be rage. It's going to be a long time before any of us really feel safe. When I left my abusive marriage, it was a very long time before I stopped being angry. And it was a long time before I was ready to move forward into not focusing so much on the anger and the unwillingness to settle for a relationship like that again. I had to really clarify what I was for, because I was very familiar with what I didn't want. But for my own clarity and for my own sanity going forward, I had to really get clear about what I did want. Not just in a relationship, but just life in general. What did I want? And once I recognized that I needed to do that, that also helped me process a lot of the lingering anger I was feeling. And you know, I think, again, the anger is justified. I don't want to dismiss that. The anger is absolutely 100% justified. It's valid. It's worthy of expression. But I don't want us to get stuck there. I don't want us to get so bogged down in continuing to discuss everything we're against that we lose ourselves and lose our way as we move forward and try to build a world that reflects what we are for. It's very hard, in my personal experience anyway, to get real clear about the kind of world you want to live in if all you know how to talk about and all you ever discuss is the kind of world you don't want to have. You know? I don't want my house filled with, say, garbage and maggots. Okay, that's great. I don't think anybody wants that. What do I want in my house, though? You know, I want a comfortable living space. I want a space that allows me to do the things that I need to do and also have, you know, a space to relax, space to read, write, create art, space for my son to do the things he needs to do. And, you know, those are things that I am for. If I had just focused on what I am against, it would be very hard to gain clarity on what I'm looking for in a home, because all I know is what I don't want. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think going forward, as we try to create a better country, a better world, a world that is, you know, truly more equitable for everyone, knowing what we're for is going to serve us better than simply knowing what we're against. I think we've made what we're against very clear. What are we for? All right, I'm going to finish this up and then come back with some final thoughts. Hang on. All right, I'm back. I do this to myself all the time. I get these wigs that have bangs and I'm like, oh, maybe I like them. And then I put them on and I'm like, I do not. I do not. Anyway, so going forward, yes, it's going to be, I think, very important to hold each other accountable and also get very clear about what we stand for. Individually and collectively, what kind of a world do we want to live in? Because our attitude about what we want is going to take us a lot further than simply focusing on what we don't want. We've made what we don't want very clear. We voted Donald Trump out of office and he is leaving in absolute disgrace, and I love it. I love everything about that. Yes, all my yes. But going forward, what kind of a world do I want to live in? Do I want to live in a world with bangs or without? Do I want to live in a world where it's no longer a question whether Black Lives matter, because it's a foregone conclusion? Yes, of course they matter. Do I want to live in a world where there's such disparity between even the middle class and the poor and the rich and the poor? I mean, do I want to live in a world where people have to continuously explain why you should care about them? I mean, I don't want to live in a world like that. I want to live in a world where, you know, people know that they matter. And I want to live in a world where people know that they matter individually and collectively. I want to live in a world where, you know, police brutality is not looked upon as a minor problem. That the reforms that we need are actively happening, not something that people just think about doing or talk about doing, but they're actually happening. I want to live in a world where people feel safe and their needs are met. That's the kind of world I want. I want to live in a world where I can get the wig that I think I bought. You know, the wig I meant to buy, not this. Yeah, it's still fun though. Anyway, so as we prepare to, you know, say goodbye to Donald Trump and his grifter family and everything that they stand for, and we deodorize and fumigate the White House in preparation for the Bidens, and we you know, prepare to embark on something new, let's get really clear about what we're for. And also, I think it's important to mention that going forward too, there needs to be some accountability. These things that have happened the last 4 years didn't just happen. People enabled them to happen. People wanted them to happen. And for all the talk of unity, it's important that there is also accountability. A big step in healing from my abuser was, you know, even though I never got an apology from him, even though he never took ownership of his actions, I had to, you know, I got to watch from afar as he was held accountable for some things in his life. And that was important to me. That was important in recognizing that what happened to me didn't just happen in a vacuum, that there is some accountability, even though I never heard an apology from him ever, and he never took ownership of the behavior in our relationship. He was held accountable in other ways, and that was important for me for my own healing. And I think it's important for the healing of this country that, you know, the people who did this, the people who put us in this position are held accountable. You can't have unity, you can't have healing without the perpetrators taking responsibility for what they did and for the impact that had on, like, everybody. Oh, sorry, I don't usually say like, but I was getting my bangs out of the way. Anyway, so if we're going to go forward in a sense of healing and unity, it is very important that the people who are responsible for this accept responsibility for forward anyway. And I don't know what just happened, but anyway, accountability, knowing what we stand for, and unity after responsibility has been taken. That's what I'm all about today. And of course, blue wigs. If you're wondering what I'm for, I am for colorful wigs, sparkly makeup, and conversations. Good conversations about difficult topics. More of that to come. All right. Have a good day. Take care of yourselves and each other. If you can tolerate wearing bangs, more power to you. I could never, ever do this. I'm so grateful this is hair I can just take off when I'm done with it. If you're going out, wear a mask. Practice social distancing. Don't shit on yourselves or anyone else. And I will see you again very soon. Bye.